Okay, Hashim, we can proceed.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Instead of Al-Muntada Islam Forum and instead of Brother Abdullah and all the members of the team and all the audience themselves, we welcome you, everybody, to this lecture that we are having on the fourth day of our conference, Journey for Guidance, Dawah after 2020. Today, we'll be having our brother Abdullah Al-Andalusi. We'll be talking about a very important topic. All over the years, I mean, intellectuals and thinkers have been searching for answers to the questions of existence and reality. The story of Qissat Al-Iman by Sheikh Nadim Jisr itself enlightens the journey for this search. It was really a nice story to handle this issue. All over the civilization have been handling this questions, and today in Muntada will with this lecture with our brother Abdullah, he will be handling this topic, and we will see how Islam is exactly the answer for the and actually the only explanation for reality. Our brother Abdullah Al-Andalusi is actually an international speaker and thinker. He is a debater at the Muslim Debate Institute, and he's the instructor at the Quran Institute. Welcome, our brother. The stage is yours.
Barakallahu feekum, brother, for the introduction, and Jazakallah khairan to the Islam Forum, all the brothers there, and for hosting this event, and for everyone who is attending. So it's my great pleasure to be here. I wish it was in Lebanon, where I can enjoy some nice kanafa bil jibn with some kahwa, as is the distinct Beiruti style. But unfortunately, of course, the current situations have caused problems for everybody. So, khair inshallah, let me share my screen and let's begin on the topic today. Okay, Bismillah. So, the topic is how Islam is the only possible explanation of reality. And it's something I've been kind of pioneering, the arguments aren't new in a way, but to really kind of get people to think about how they can understand why they're Muslim, and for those who are non-Muslim to understand the truth of Islam. It is something I realized was that many people who become Muslim, they become Muslim when they realize Islam makes sense. They say Islam makes sense. But many people didn't investigate, why does Islam make sense? And what do people mean when they say Islam makes sense? Usually it's kind of intuitive, it's in the subconscious of many people who are investigating Islam sincerely, that they see that explains their existence, explains reality, everything makes sense. And the Islamic explanation just makes sense to what they can see. So what I kind of realized is that this is actually the majority way that most people become Muslim. It's not that they can see the Ihjaz of Quran, the miracle of the Quran, the linguistic miracle of the Quran. They can't see the miracles done by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They can't, because they don't live at that time. So they don't have access to these things if they are non-Arabic speakers. So how do non-Arabic speakers understand the truth of Islam? And when I was reflecting upon the words of the Quran, I realized that the Quran expects the reader to recognize it, to recognize its truth. And it makes arguments, rational arguments. By rational, I mean arguments that are based on fiqh, on your thoughts, right? On thinking, on observing, and coming to conclusions about what we can observe. So what we see in the Quran is that in Surah Imran, for example, to give the English translation, it says, those who remember Allah while standing or sitting or on their sides and give thought to the creation of the heavens and the earth, and saying, our Lord, you did not create this aimlessly, exalted are you, so above this saying. So the Quran, in its arguments, it expects you, the reader, to recognize the truth of the Quran and also recognize the truth of what it's pointing to. And in this basis, I realized that this is perhaps the main truth, the main argument of Islam, the main way that we can observe that truth. Now, I'm going to go to a kind of an old Western thinker who said, if a man will begin with certainties, he shall end in doubts. But if he will be content to begin with doubts, he shall end in certainties. Now, this expression by Francis Bacon, who you could say developed the scientific method from the famous Ibn Haytham in his book Al-Manazir, obviously about optics and light. So what we see from Francis Bacon is that many people go around with assumptions. They assume what they're told in their society is correct, what their parents tell them is correct, what their culture is correct. Most people never really question these basic assumptions unless they are forced to, or society changes and they follow where society goes. So Francis Bacon was kind of, in a way, perhaps inspired by Muslim kind of thinking about the scientific method, which was that we won't assume that what the ancient Greeks told us about the natural world is true. We will test it for ourselves. We will look at it, investigate it for ourselves. And that's the only way we can end with certainties. Whereas if we assume things are correct, reality will prove us wrong. Reality will prove us that we were wrong to have this assumption. So we must always begin any kind of argument by proofs and by thinking about these things. And so the truth of Islam can only be based on us thinking about what we can observe. So we'll go to the first observations that we can think about to see what can we know about reality. So I'll just leave it here for the time being on this screen, and just kind of, actually I'll just kind of discuss. So when you're born into this reality, you realize something. Firstly, you realize that you exist because you're doing the thinking, right? So you're doing the thinking, but you're also doing the experiencing. Right? So you know that you exist, and you know there's a world outside yourself that you can't control, and you know that you didn't bring yourself into existence either. So you know these basic things. So now the question is, what is outside this? What is outside yourself? What is this external world that you don't control? And what is the ultimate origin of this external world? What is the ultimate origin of yourself? These are the basic thoughts that we need to ask ourselves to start with yaqeen, to base our thought on yaqeen, on certainty. So now to go back to sharing my screen. So now, though I describe this as an argument demonstrating the existence of God, what I really wanted to start with to draw people's attention, because people tend to pick particular things in the universe, like, oh, what about this tree? Where did this tree come from? Where did this rock come from? And so on. But instead, I will merely draw your attention to two things which is undeniable. There is existence. So there is wujud, so there is basically existence. And then there is change. So we see things changing, we experience change. Now, the reason why I made it such a very basic aspect of reality to think about is because you might have, certainly in the West, there are these skeptics who arose and they deny anything they can know is possible. They say, maybe what you're seeing is you're in a simulation. How do you know you're not in the Matrix? Which is a Western movie. How do you know that you're not having a dream? How do you know all these things to try to create uncertainty in people? Whereas I say, well, look, before I answer that question, I can answer something. I can point to something that is true, right, and is undeniable. There is wujud, so there's existence, and then there is change. Okay, there is change. And what was very interesting is that what we see in the Quran is many times it talks about the creations of the heavens and the earth, but it also talks about the alternation of night and day, the change of night and day. Now, many Muslims, perhaps when they read that verse in the Quran, they just think it's referring to the most important thing is just there is a day and there is a night. When the Quran is referring to, why is there alternation? Why is there change? So it's not just as the heavens and earth exist, but there is also change. So it's the most fundamental experience. So whether you're in the matrix, whether you're having a fever or you're in a dream, you can still see change. Change is always going to be there. So what can we make, if we're using our mind, our aql, what can we deduce from this? Well, I want to say our God-given mind, but we haven't yet proved that just yet. So what can we deduce? So the first point is there is existence and change, undeniable. Something cannot come from nothing by nothing, or as the ancient Greek philosophers say, from nothing, nothing comes. Therefore, some of existence is necessary. So there is some aspect of what is wujud that is wajib, right? So there's something about what exists that is necessary. And by necessary, you mean it was always existing, because if something can't come from nothing by nothing, and there is existence now, this means there was always existence. But the question is, what kind of existence, right? So we know that there cannot be an infinite regress of change, meaning you can't have an infinite amount of change in the past. And I'm gonna just quickly jump from this slide to this slide. I'll come back to show, demonstrate this. An infinite regress, it just means that there was an infinite amount of change that needed to happen before reaching this point in time. So if it was said that there was an infinite amount of change happening in the past, a causal chain of change, right? So each chain is causing, each point in the chain causes the next point in the chain, and next one, next one, next one, next one. And to get to this point in our existence, we had to wait for an infinite amount of change to happen. Would we ever get to this point? And I often make the joke that to atheists, I say, if they say there is infinite amount of time in the past, infinite amount of change, so the universe is eternal, and I say, I disagree with you, and I have a refutation for you, and they say, okay, tell me the refutation. I'll say, I'll only tell you the refutation after an infinite amount of time, but you will get it. They'll say, well, I won't be able to get that refutation because an infinite amount of time never finishes. Well, and now you have my refutation. If we had to wait an infinite amount of time to get to this point, we'd never get to this point. If I told you that this conference, it will end when it will end after an infinite amount of time finishes. But the word infinite obviously means it can't finish. It doesn't finish, right? In finis from the Latin, not finishable, doesn't finish. So to get to this point in time, you can't have an infinite past of causal chain. You have to have a start point to our existence. There has to be a start point to change. And this is really the point of this. So since infinity cannot finish or end, no point in change or time could be reached if it was preceded by, meaning it depended upon the completion of an infinite amount of change or time. You'd never finish reading this if it was an infinite amount of text. You'd never end a movie if the movie was infinitely long. So the fact that we have starting and ending in this, what change is starting and ending. So the reason that we can see starting and ending means that there is a beginning, an ultimate beginning or cause behind this chain of causality, this chain of change. So there cannot be an infinite regress of change. So for change to begin, there must be the capacity for an existence, for something that is wujud. So there's a type of some existence to initiate, create change from nothing, or from a state of rest, meaning from, you could say, emotionlessness, they start motion. So they start the change or they begin things that didn't exist before. Therefore, it is the first cause of change. So whatever is wajib al-wujud, whatever is this necessary existence, it is the cause of change. And you know that it's not yourself because you change and you're involved in change. So it's not you. You didn't initiate the existence of the universe, and everything in the universe is subject to change. So the question is, what got everything changing? What initiated this change? If this existent thing, so if this wajib al-wujud, the thing that is wajib al-wujud, is the first cause, then nothing compels it to create changes. So if this thing initiates everything that initiates the first changes that make, and then i.e. the universe beginning or starting to move, then nothing makes it do that. Because if something makes it change, if something makes it create, then this thing isn't the first cause. This thing isn't the initiator, right? It's not al-mubdi, right? It is the initiator, all right? So if this thing is al-mubdi, if this thing is the initiator, then nothing is making it initiate. Nothing is making it create. It's doing it itself, by itself. If this first cause creates what is unnecessary to it, it can only be by choice. Now, what I mean by unnecessary, I mean that it is making things and it's not being forced to make things or to create things or to start change. So if there's nothing making it do what it's doing, then the only explanation left, the only possibility left, if nothing else is making it do it, so no external force is pushing it, there's no internal mechanism like a clock that's more fundamental than than al-mubdi, that makes al-mubdi initiate, makes the initiator initiate. Then it itself is the origin of the initiation. Nothing internal, like a smaller mechanism. Because the question is, what would make that mechanism initiate? What's making that? And then if that's a smaller mechanism, what's making that initiate and that initiate? It's like saying that if I have a watch, the watch is moving because there's an infinite chain of smaller and smaller mechanisms inside the watch. Well, it wouldn't move if you had to wait for an infinite chain of mechanisms to begin the change. So this thing, al-mubdi, the thing that initiates, it is, or the initiator in English, it is doing it by itself. And the only explanation left is that if it does it by itself and it doesn't have to make things, then it's doing it by choice. That's the only possibility left. The capacity of this first cause to select one cause, to cause one type of effect over potentially infinite other possible types or variations of effect also demonstrates it makes choice. So the creator or the initiator, it's not just initiating change, but the change is of a certain kind, it's a certain amount. So this universe could have been bigger, could have been smaller when it was started, could have had more energy, one photon more energy than it did, or one less photon energy than it did. So not only is this thing choosing to make the universe, but because there was a potentially infinite amount of varieties, it could do anything. It could make any particular product, but it picks one particular kind of product from an infinite possibilities of product that it could make. This shows that not only does it choose to make the universe, but it has to choose as to what kind of universe it's going to make as well. So that means it has another proof that it has choice. It determines, it is the measurer, it determines the size or the amount or the starting conditions of this universe. But also, if something can initiate from nothing, so if nothing is making it initiate, that first move or that first creating that it does was from a point where there was, in a way, zero energy, let's say, and then it creates change. It's adding energy. From what? It has to be from nothing, because if it is al-mubdi, if it is the initiator, then it has to add nothing add from nothing, add something to reality. It adds to what exists, meaning it can create from nothing. That's the only way anything can be the initiator. To initiate from not moving to moving, you add energy. You have to add energy to existence from nothing. And so we know that if it can add energy from nothing, then it has unlimited power, because it can make from nothing. It can add from nothing. It can add to existence. So it has unlimited power. Now, bringing all these conclusions together, if the first cause has the ability to choose, this demonstrates it has a will, a irada in Arabic, right? It has a will. To be able to choose, you must have a will, or at least something that we approximates to what the word we use, the will, irada. It has a will, and something with will and the capacity to initiate or create is the definition of God, an ilah, right? There's only two minimum definitions that these both have to be satisfied for the definition to be met. And the definition is that an ilah, or a concept of God, has to have irada, and it has to have quwwah, right? It has to have power, but unlimited power, and it must be the initiator of existence and can make, obviously, from nothing. With these two conditions for the definition satisfied by the inevitable conclusion of that we from our thinking, that we have demonstrated the existence of God. There has to be an ilah. Of course, you can make a further deduction, which is if something is unlimited, if it has unlimited power, it can only be the only one ilah. There can only be one ilah and not two, because if there was two and they're both unlimited in power, they would limit each other out of existence. And so there can only be one, because if there was two, they would not exist. And this, you see this argument represented in the Quran when you see this argument against the Christians who believe that Jesus is God. When the Quran gives a really amazing argument, it says, who is going to be the least in power if Allah was to destroy Isa and his mother? If he was to destroy them, who would be the lesser in power? And that's an amazing argument, because if the Christians say, no, Jesus is equal in power to God and his mother, then they would not be God, because then God would have something which would be as powerful as him, and he would be limited. He couldn't do something which was possible to do. He couldn't do it. It would be stopped from doing it, and therefore he would be weak. But if you say that, no, of course, Allah is the one who is going to be the strongest because he's infinite, and so Jesus is going to have to be the least in power. And of course, Christians almost realize it in their fitrah that, of course, Jesus is the lesser of out of God and Jesus. Jesus is going to be the less one, the least one, the least in power. And that if Jesus is the weakest, then how is he God? How is he an ilah? Or how is he worthy of worship, right? If he is weak, but in comparison to God. So it's a really great argument, but it's also based on this really rational understanding that if there's more than one God, they limit each other, and they would limit each other out of existence, because they both have unlimited power. They could destroy each other. And also there's other angles you could look at it from. For example, their jurisdiction is unlimited. So they control everything. They control existence. And if there's more than one existence, then one would control the other. But if you're saying they're both equal, they would control each other at the same time. It wouldn't make sense. And some people would say this would be no different to just basically it's one will, and therefore there can't be more than one will. There can't be more than one irada when it comes to something that is an ilah. There can only be one irada, and one irada is one ilah. So that's how we know not only God exists, but there can only be one God and can't be multiple gods. There's other arguments the Quran gives, like if the universe was under the jurisdiction of two gods, you would see the laws of physics changing itself. It would be chaos, not just things, not just the laws of physics and particles coming together and smashing. No. The laws of physics would change. It would be chaos because you have two different ilah who have different kind of wills, each one clashing and changing the universe, and the laws of physics would be changing. It would be complete chaos and corruption. That's another argument that the Quran uses, but an empirical argument. It's an argument that you can observe, whereas there's a rational argument. So an argument, it couldn't be the case because there can only be one powerful being. So let's go back to the slides. So now we've concluded that God exists. We then come to another concept, another possibility that people try to claim. So they might say, well, maybe God exists, but how do you know that this God, perhaps, why would he care about us? Like, maybe he makes the universe, fine, but why would he care about us? Maybe we are so small and insignificant, or maybe he made the universe, by accident, unintentionally, or he made it, but he doesn't get involved. After he made it, he doesn't really get involved in the universe. So this is called a deism in English. I know that some people there's been reports in some Muslim countries that because Muslims haven't been equipped with yaqeen in their belief in Islam, that some don't go to atheism straight away. Some go to maybe deism. So they say, okay, God exists, but maybe he has no interest or concern with us. So we're going to discuss the possibilities and see if they're true or not. So possibility one, the creator made the universe unintentionally. There's a clear problem with this. If the creator is the first cause, and I just see the previous slides that I already mentioned, which is basically here. If he's the first cause, then what we see is, if he's the first cause, then how can he make creation not by his choice? Creation can only come about by his choice, so he can't make it unintentionally. Now, if they try to argue that, how do you know the creator is not like mad or insane or performs actions accidentally? They'd be committing what I call the anthropomorphic fallacy, where they attribute to God like he's a human being that has parts and components that can have problems with them. So in this, they see that we would say he doesn't have parts and components like finite creatures that can make mistakes, and he is the initiator. He is the initiator of all things. He must do things intentionally, and madness is when there is a contradiction or clash within a creature that has different components. There's misfiring, obviously, nerve cells and things like that. There's problems, chemical imbalances. It's a misconfiguration inside a human being. But if the creator is the initiator and he's absolute, there is no internal mechanism. He doesn't have any mechanism. He is the pure one, the pure initiator. So he doesn't have madness. He wouldn't have he wouldn't make things accidentally, because things have to be intended by him to exist. So they are intentional. So it can't be accident. Now, the Quran gives some arguments against this, which is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we did not create the heaven and the earth and everything between them in vain. English is translated as vain, sometimes translated as it means a joke or a jest, something with no purpose, with no intention. That is the assumption of those who disbelieve, who reject the truth. And it gives them a warning because of their assumptions. And going back to Francis Bacon, he said those who make assumptions, they have a certainty that God doesn't exist, and they make assumptions, and these assumptions are incorrect. So they believe that the universe is basically purposeless, but that's impossible. As in purpose meaning not intended. Well, it is intended. It has to be intended, otherwise it couldn't come into existence. Again, as I already mentioned this. The Quran expects you to realize by yourself. Those who remember Allah who say, our Lord, you did not create this without purpose or aimlessly. Exalted are you above such a thing, because only a human being or a creature could do things accidentally. But something which is the creator can't do things accidentally. Everything must be by intention. So the Quran expects you to come to this realization yourself if you give thought. 2, the creator doesn't intervene in the universe. So they say, okay, creator makes the universe, doesn't intervene in it. There's a problem with this view. If the creator intervened to make the universe, why would he stop? So making the universe itself is intervention. It's getting involved with the universe. And everything in the universe, every tiny particle, every small thing inside it is intended by the creator to exist and to change and be the way it was, what would happen to it, because the laws of the universe are the laws that he intended to exist. So why would he stop if everything he intended, including the laws, and of course, that if he has a choice, that means he has, in a way, knowledge, because he picks a particular type of universe, not any type of, only another type of universe, a particular kind, which means he intends everything that exists to exist, and everything that will happen or come about is obviously his intention. But as deduced in the last slide, the creator must sustain what he actively and what he creates actively and continuously, because the initiator to begin the motion or the starting point, or to begin it from the starting point, you're actually beginning the sustaining of the universe. The universe cannot come about by itself. So how can it exist by itself? So when the creator makes something, he's basically sustaining it into existence and beginning sustaining it into existence. It can't be an independent source of energy from himself, because firstly, everything is in his jurisdiction, everything he controls. And secondly, if the universe isn't wajib al-wujud, so as in it's not necessary existence, it can't be independent then. How would it be independent? How would it, to make yourself exist, to continue yourself existing, you must be the source of your own existence, to continue yourself existing, right? But you're not. And we see this, we live in a world of change. You can't stop yourself from dying. You can't stop yourself from, sometimes getting accidents that hurt you or scratch you, or all kinds of things happen to you, because you're not the source of your own existence. If you were independent of your own existence, or you're independent in existence, then nothing could affect you. Right? You wouldn't be affected by anything else, because you would be determining your own existence, your own shape, your own size. But because you can't determine that, you clearly will be affected by other things. So the creator is not only intervening to make the universe, he's intervening right now to keep you in existence. And if he stopped intervening, you would cease to exist. The third point, the idea that the creator is uninterested and unconcerned with the actions of quote unquote insignificantly small creatures called humans on a minute tiny rock in a vast universe. The problems with this, again, it's anthropomorphizing God, assuming he's a human, assuming he's like a creature. We have a limited attention span. We only can see a few things. We don't have an infinite attention span. But if the creator is sustaining all things, and he must be doing so by choice, this means that everything down to the smallest subatomic particle, he is choosing to specifically sustain. If so, then this would mean that he would certainly be concerned and interested with the existence of every small, each thing that changes and the change that occurred to it. So the very fact that if he's sustaining everything and he's doing it by choice, then he clearly knows what everything he's doing, because he's sustaining its existence and continuing to sustain it and making it behave according to the laws of physics that he created in the first place, that he initiated. And of course, if the creator is unlimited, meaning he doesn't have, he's not exhaustible in energy. And he possesses a will of infinite potential. So the will can make anything it desires, so any infinite potential it wants to. Why would his attention be limited such that he couldn't notice even a small particle? So it doesn't make sense. If the creator is unlimited, then his attention span is equally unlimited. And that's a second point, a second refutation. The first one was he's sustaining everything, so he knows what he's sustaining. And the second point is that his attention span isn't like a human. It's not limited. It's because humans make this assumption about God that many humans invented polytheism, where they invented smaller gods that were, they would even say these gods are born. They're born, they were created later on, and they are there to pay attention to you because the high God, he's too high up to notice you. And that's where shirk comes from, or polytheism of many polytheist religions come from. People prayed to saints or to angels or to invented gods, because they said, well, the God, the high God, he's too busy to notice me or to listen to me. So I will pray to a local administrator. I don't know, some kind of like a government thing. You have to go to you can't speak to the president. You have to speak to the local administrator. And that's where polytheism comes from. But what the Quran reminds us, that the creator says, and nothing is hidden from your Lord, the weight of even an atom on earth, nor in heaven, nor less than that, nor more than that, but it is in a clear record. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything, every tiny particle. So of course he'd be concerned with us. He intended us to exist. He intended you personally to exist, and everything that happens in your life, he intended to happen. So he's certainly concerned with you, with your existence, and intending things for you. Now, this in a way is to connect to what I'm going to be saying next, which is there's in a way an implicit argument that they can make. They say the creator's creation of the universe was for no purpose. They say it was for no purpose. Here's the point here. The word purpose, at least in English anyway, is ambiguous if you don't define what you mean by purpose. So if by purpose you mean intention and choice, then it has been established that the creation was by choice of the creator. So everything that exists is intended. The action of something with will or irada displays not only causal intent, but intention and goal too. So what we see is that not only does the creator make everything and intend that it exists, but there's something else. That if he made the universe completely static, like nothing is moving, then maybe you could just say he intends the universe to exist and that's it. But there's something else now. There's something on top of this, which is he created the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day, as the Quran says, the change of night and day, i.e. time. He creates time, he creates change. This means that not only does he intend the beginning of things, but he intends them to go somewhere, to change into something. They have an end goal. They are a destination. So he's intending something else, not just existence, but for this existence to do something or to change into something. That's clearly the case because change exists. The alternation of night and day exists. He intended it. The choice of a particular thing rather than another indicates a goal. Since the creator wasn't compelled to create nor requires anything from creation, the choice to create rather than the choice not to indicates a goal purpose behind just creating. So if you were to see a car for the first time and you never saw a car before, right? So you encountered this, right? A Sayara, right? And you say, oh, what is this, right? You investigate it, you'd see the wheels, you'd see the steering wheel and so on and so forth. And you'd conclude that it must be for movement. It must be for, for it moving and going places. which is where the word sayara in Arabic derives from the word sara, kind of to move, right? So it moves on the ground, or it moves, something that's moving. So the word, hence the sayara is now meaning a car. Something is, it's primary in purpose from what you can observe, is it's intended to move, but not just move where the driver in the steering wheel decides where it wants to go. So it's there to help the driver, or to allow the driver to go to a destination. That's what you can deduce by looking at the nature of the thing created. You can look at its intention. So if the creator intended everything in the universe, which we know he did, we have to ask why in one form rather than others. So if a complex universe rather than a simple creation, this indicates that the complexity was intended over a simpler universe. Meaning that he could have just created atoms and left it like that, just a bunch of primary atoms, let's just say hydrogen atoms, and left it like that. But no, there is more than just one kind of atom, and there's more than one kind of also subatomic particle. There is a variety of different things. And within this variety, these basic building blocks connect together to make shapes of different sizes. And these forms and shape now become planets, stars, obviously our sun, and mountains, and then trees and things like this. So there isn't just a bunch of atoms floating around and just moving or oscillating or what have you. They're doing something else. This universe has something else in it, which is these things coming together to form structures. And we know that this must be intended by the creator. And so now we have to investigate these structures to work out, what does God intend by these things? And we see that there are three basic aspects of reality, which is existence, change, and law, or what we call things changing in a regular way. In a regular way, this is what we call the laws of physics. We also see that the universe has three kinds of thing in it. We have, so matter, so there's matter, but matter of different kinds, right? Substance of different kinds. So we have matter that is just matter, it's passive. You can push it and it moves. If you don't touch it, it will remain the way it is in one direction forever, if it's traveling in space, for example. So it's passive, as it only reacts to change happening to it, but it doesn't do anything else. Then we have life, otherwise called organized or proactive matter, which is, it's a form of matter where the form creates a type of change such that it's almost like the change is being not initiated by the thing, but it's like it's being initiated. So it's trying to survive, it's trying to actively preserve itself, it's trying to actively reproduce itself. And then we have, from this type of life, we have humans, knowledge forming animate matter. Animate, the word animate comes from the Greek word animus, which means to move, right? So like moving, so it's basically animated. So what's the goal behind creation then? What's the purpose behind creation? Well, if you're making some rational deductions just based on your thinking about things, the first thing that creation shows is that God can create, that this creator he can make things, he can create from nothing. And so then the first basis that all things in creation show, the first thing they do is they show the creator can create. And in the Quran, there's an interesting verse in the Quran that says, is the one that cannot create like the one who can create, right? It's a beautiful verse in the Quran because like all other verses, but in this particular case, it's very beautiful for our purpose here, because it illustrates, there's two arguments it makes in a way, the same verse, but makes two. One is against polytheists. One is that you worship statues, but the statue can't do anything for you. So why are you worshiping it? But also an interesting meaning is, if the creator never made anything, if he never made or created anything ever, then how is that different in effect from something that can't make? anything, that can't create. So by the creator making things, creating things, when before there was nothing, he added to existence. What he makes demonstrates is an ayat, right? Is an ayat. It is an evidence, a demonstration of his power to create, right? And so even though this creator doesn't need anything from us, of course, doesn't need anything from us to make when you make. But the first thing that we can conclude is that while the creator doesn't need to be fed to continue existing because it's wajib al-wujud, so it doesn't need anything. But what you can conclude is that the intention for us to, you could say the first or primary intention behind all things is to be an ayat of Allah, right? Is to be you could translate it as evidence, you could translate it as a manifestation, so a demonstration, but all things are a demonstration of the power of God, because literally that's what they are. They are a manifestation, as in becoming apparent, in English, manifest, zahir, becoming apparent, of his power to create. Right? So this is a clear demonstration. So all things in existence, that's their first purpose. To be an ayat of Allah, that's their first purpose. And of course, the laws which underpin and quantify their relationship with other objects, so the laws that they follow, and every aspect of them, from their existence, the fact that they change, and they change according to certain rules, all these things are ayat of Allah, every aspect. So it's not just existence, but change now, and then change according to certain rules. These are now three aspects of reality. Each one is an ayat of Allah, is a demonstration of his existence by definition. So it is a vain supposition, and this means it is a silly assumption to think that the vast inanimate universe exists solely to serve us as sustenance and evidence. Rather, its relationship with us is only part of its purpose and not the entire sum of its purpose. So some people, when they make an argument about the universe, they say, they assume that God made the entire universe just for us. But there's a verse in the Quran that says that the creations of the heavens and the earth is greater than the creation of mankind. But most of mankind does not know. If the universe was created for us, then why wouldn't we know? We would have to know. We would be given that knowledge. We'd be given that. Also, while you wouldn't need this other universe, you just need maybe, what we can see. What this shows is that the universe wasn't made for us. Yes, Allah made a place in this universe for us to exist because we have a purpose we have to fulfill, and so we have to exist somewhere, and we have to exist in a place that is habitable for us. But anyone who assumes that the entire universe was made for us is something which is not only not in the Quran, but also we would have no reason to deduce that from observation. Everything exists as an ayat of Allah, first and foremost. Whether you see it or not, it exists as an ayat of Allah, and its purpose is to be that ayat of Allah, whether you ever encounter other planets or not, or even other bubble existence. Maybe there's different bubbles of existence. What we call the universe has multiple bubbles, multiple layers. We don't know at the minute, just from our investigation. All we know is that there's something that's much bigger than us. We can't see all of it, and it exists as an ayat of Allah, as a manifestation of the Creator, and not for us. We're just given a space in this universe for us to be the ayat of Allah in a different way. Our basic molecules in our body are an ayat of Allah, like any molecule, all the molecules in the universe. But we have other things. We're not just are not living molecules. We're something else on top of that. So if everything in the universe fulfills its purpose to the Creator by simply existing and changing and following the rules of the laws of the universe. So all these planets and all these stars and galaxies around the universe, they fulfill their purpose to the Creator by simply existing, changing, and following the change according to the rules that the Creator set for them. That's all they need to do. That's all they are doing, and that's all they can do. but that is their purpose, and that's it. And hence, when the Quran says that everything in the heavens and the earth obeys him, serves him, this makes sense to what we have deduced from our observation. We see that in creation, there is a hierarchy. We see that you have substance, you have change, you have law, and then you have, it's called accidental forms, basically structures. So structures that happen as the result of change. Then you have actively changing structures. So structures that actually they don't rely from external things to make them change, but they change from within themselves. We call it growth. This is life, basically. Then we have self-preserving forms, so survival, reproduction. And then we have us and animals, which have consciousness. And then we have knowledge, which is metacognition, as in we can form a mental model of the universe. Our minds are designed to form a model of the external world. And we have something else. We have the experience of free will, or the choice within causality. So we have these things. Now, these things we know exist and they fulfill their purpose by merely existing, true. Consciousness as well. But consciousness is interesting because consciousness needs to be explained. Why is there consciousness? What is consciousness? Consciousness is, there is something that is doing, that is a shaheed, right? It is witnessing the creation, something that is observing. What we know from this is that whatever the creator, whatever this thing is inside us that is witnessing, and we can't explain it through normal matter or looking at matter. But all we know is that if we have this, it means the creator intended for us to have this, or animals as well, we think. And if the creator intended us and animals to have this consciousness, that means that our purpose is not just merely existing and changing and following the laws of physics, but also to bear witness to the creation. That's the only explanation for consciousness. Why would the creator give us consciousness if our purpose wasn't to bear witness? He didn't intend for us as a species to bear witness to the creation. And then now we know that we don't live in a matrix, and we don't live in a dream, and we don't live in, we don't all having a fever at the same time. How we know this? Because if the creator intends for us to bear witness to an external reality, a reality outside us, why would he make it a false reality, a reality that doesn't exist? Okay, and we see this in the Quran, where it says in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "We did not create the heavens and the earth and what is between them except in truth." Bil-haq, the word they use in the Arabic is bil-haq. So Allah made the heavens and the earth and everything in between them and what is between them bil-haq, with truth, with reality as well, because the word is the same as waqiya, as what is real. So we can deduce it. And look, the Quran agrees with our observation of the universe, with our thinking about the universe. But there's something else. Knowledge. We are different to animals in one thing, which is we have the ability to build mental models of the universe. And by thinking, we can come to knowledge of the creator. So the creator has intended for us to be able to deduce his own existence. That means that we're meant to bear witness, and we're meant to bear witness to his existence via deduction, via our thinking, realizing that, okay, there is an origin for all these things, which is not like everything that we see. It's not finite, it's not limited, it's not changing. There's something outside of this that made everything that we observe. This is intended. So we can see that we have to have some kind of relationship with the creator. But what relationship with the creator? Well, then we have this. We at least feel that we have free will. We at least feel it. So some of you might say, how do you know you have free will? Maybe you're a machine or whatever, determinism. Say, look, without me even getting into a debate on that, and I can if they want to, but I'm not going to do it here. you can deduce if God exists and everything that he made is intended, then you having free will, an irada, a type of irada, means that you were at least you feel you have it. You feel that you have it. That was intended for you to have it. And why would you feel something that actually doesn't exist or doesn't have a real reality? So we must have a free will. And if it's a free will, that means we have to be able to choose. So our relationship with the Creator is to recognize he exists, but also it must be out of choice, because we have free will. Whereas animals, we don't see animals having free will. For us, we are a bit different. So animals, they have their purpose to be shaheed to existence. Okay, fine. But they don't have knowledge. They don't have free will. We do that. They have memory, but they don't have knowledge or the ability to build concepts, mental models. They only have remembered sensations. They can remember an experience, but they don't have knowledge, abstract models, as we say in English. So our purpose is now a little bit different from the animals. It's not just to bear witness, it's to bear witness to God, and it must be voluntary. But there's something else that we need. I'll come back to that in a second, these verses in the Quran in a second. Because we have mind, we have conceptual memory, so we can build knowledge, basically, store knowledge. We have the feeling of being able to choose actions from two equally pressing motivations. So if we have two motivations, we feel we could pick one or the other. Then humans would be incomplete as a species if they were given nothing further in terms of knowledge about how to fulfill our instincts, our fitrah, how to decide between one motivation and another. We need to have a criteria. We need a furqan, a criteria to help us decide between one choice and another choice. And of course, we need to how to live without being self-destructive or self-defeating, meaning people have many behaviors. They think, maybe I'll just let my heart, my qalb decide. I'll let it decide what to do, and maybe that will sort me out. But if you follow where your heart wants, it's just basically your impulses. You end up sometimes more miserable, making big mistakes. So the heart isn't a good instructor in this. We are not like the bee. Bees, they have a type of something like an ilham, right? Something inside them, they know what to do. They can construct beehives perfectly without blueprints or anything, any kind of design. How do they know how to do this? We don't have these instructions. We have a mind. We can make knowledge, but based on what? On what? We need a basis to decide how do we live. What is our law? What is the law for human beings? Every animal seems to know what to do. We don't know what to do. So therefore, we need revelation, right? We need something that is tanzil. We need wahi. We need something that is revealed to us that we didn't know before about our purpose. How are we going to use our mind? How are we going to use our free will? And our bodies, what we're meant to be doing. We need to have guidance in these things. And if we have free will, and we're meant to come to a voluntary choice to come to recognize the Creator, and presumably a voluntary choice to follow whatever the law is for human beings, then there will have to be consequences if we don't choose to do that. And everything in the universe obeys the Creator's laws. So what happens for those people who don't obey the Creator's laws? There will have to be a consequence for this. And the consequence, but you can't allow people to not obey the Creator. And if people choose out of choice to reject the existence of God, once they know about it, of course, if you don't know about it, then of course it's not your choice, it's not your fault. But if you can come to that existence, like let's say if you're born obviously like deaf, dumb and blind, then of course you couldn't deduce anything. You wouldn't have any thought anyway. But if you were given that life and you choose with knowledge or knowing the possibility that God exists, not to investigate further, not to even ask the question, what created everything, then you will be there must be some way, some perfection that will occur where you will be brought back into recognizing the Creator. Ultimately, everything, and you'll be brought back to recognizing the Creator out of choice. But what can make you, out of choice, recognize the Creator? Will be for those people who choose to recognize the Creator and to follow the laws that the Creator has given them. Then they don't need to be corrected or changed. They've already achieved their purpose. But those people who don't recognize the Creator and they choose not to recognize the Creator, there must be a conclusion for them where they are brought into recognizing the Creator, into and following and recognizing Him as the highest. And we see in Islam, there is a solution. There is a information that is given to us in the wahi, and the wahi is that this life, where you see that different things happen to different people. Not everyone. We're all meant to be the same souls, but we have different life experiences. Some have more pain than others. Some have more pleasure than others. So you have this inequality in our experience in this life, but we're all the same. This must mean that there is something more than this life, where everything will be made balanced. And that includes those people who chose not to recognize the Creator. And in the Quran, it says there is an answer for this. And the answer is that there is a place where we will be judged. So the Yawm al-Hisab, where we will be accounted for. And those who recognize God freely and obeyed Him freely will be given pleasure. Because as we know from observing creatures, living things, when you do something, when you attain your desire, the brain rewards you with dopamine and serotonin, which is a reward. They call it a reward mechanism. You've achieved something the desire wanted, and so here's your reward. So we know the Creator made this in us, but if we encounter something that we're not meant to be doing or is bad, we feel pain. It's meant to motivate you to go away from it. And this is the mechanism that the Creator gave to these living things, and us and creatures. So in the hereafter, of course, why wouldn't He continue the same thing that He initiated in this life, which is pleasure as a reward for achieving what you're meant to be doing or achieving your true desires. And for those who fail to achieve their true desires and be out of choice, and that's what they want. That's their choice. That's who they are. They are people who reject the Creator. Then they need to be motivated to finally recognize the Creator. And the only place for them is a place where all other pleasures that distracted them will be taken away. And all that is left is pain and aversion. Because, as we see in the Quran, it says that only in Jahannam, there be people, they say, now we confess that we were sinful. Now, those in Jahannam, now we know we're wrong. Now we say we're wrong. Now we say that we should have recognized you. If you take us out, we would recognize you. We would worship, we would follow the rules that you set down, i.e. we would worship you. And what does the Quran say? If they were taken out of Jahannam, of hell, they would go right back to doing the same things they were, following pleasures and other than the Creator, not following the Creator, not recognizing the Creator, which is their purpose. And so Jahannam is a place, a permanent place for those people who they've chosen as their nature now. They've chosen their nature to be those who only recognize the Creator in Jahannam. Does any of you know people who they do bad things? They only care about their own self-interest. But when they're going to get punished for it, or when they've discovered, only when they're going to get punished, only when they say, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. I know I'm wrong now. I won't do it again. I won't do it again. I know I'm wrong. And when you forgive them or they pass that punishment, they go right back to doing the exact same thing without any remorse. They're not shy about it. they're not ashamed about it. They go right back to doing the exact same thing again. And the only time they say that they are wrong for doing it is when they're going to get punished, is when they get caught, right? And so when we see how Islam describes the purpose of mankind is to worship God, recognize God, to follow his commands, to follow, which is a part of our fitrah in a way to do this, then we see, when Islam explains there's a hereafter that will be a balance between all things, between animals, between human beings who hurt each other and do this, there'll be a balance. And those who have more suffering in this life will be given more, and those who had less suffering will be given less because they had less suffering, and there'll be this balance. And then there'll be finally a sorting out of humans into a place where they will permanently recognize God. Those in Jannah, those in Jahannam. So everyone will worship God in the end. Everyone will recognize God in the end, and you'll be in the right place to do that, right? We see that there is no other explanation for reality other than that was provided by, what is revealed to us by al-dhikr, which is the Quran. Described as a dhikr, what? Reminding you of what we forgot, of what our ancestors were told, and they forgot over time. So the Quran is al-dhikr, it's a reminder. It's also reminding you, look around you, you can see the truth of this. You can see the truth of this. And there's a verse in the Quran that said, had this come from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would find in it many contradictions, because there is no other possible way to explain reality. Any other possible way has contradictions in it. And so only the right way, the right truth behind reality will have no contradictions in it. But also there's a verse in the Quran that talks about, if you doubt this comes from then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, produce a book like it, right? So if you think that the Islam is not correct and the Quran doesn't come from God, you produce a book like it. Now, people often said, scholars have said, this refers to writing like the language of the Quran. Can you imitate it? Yeah, and the miracle of the Quran is you can't imitate the style of the Arabic, how it has maximum meaning condensed into it, yet perfect rhythm, of a perfect rhythm, something that you can't get in any language. The more you have, the more meaning you put into a text, like prose, the less rhythm it is. So, when you read a law book is not poetic, is it? But the more you make something rhythmic, the less precise the words you use, the less precise you have, you have to just pick words that make a rhythm. So the people say this is the miracle of the Quran, but I'd say there's another miracle of the Quran. There's not a ihjaz of the Quran. And this ihjaz is the mu'jiza in it is the meaning, not just the form, but the meaning, the matan, right, of the Quran. There is no other explanation of reality except that what the Quran has provided. So I've summarized a lot of things. There's so many more details the Quran describes about reality, which makes even more sense. But this is the process that many people who become Muslim, they realize when they are seeing the explanation in the Quran. They said, this makes sense to what I observe. This makes sense to everything that exists. There is no other possible explanation other than this one I've seen in the Quran. And I kind of finish off because someone was asking about resources. I do teach at the Quran Institute. That's basically where I teach at, and I teach different courses, usually on things like how to refute and critique Western political philosophy, liberalism, secularism, nationalism, and so on and so forth. But I also some of these slides were taken from and they're not the full course, but they're taken from just a few of the slides that we used in the course to demonstrate the truth of Islam. It's called a Dawah Masterclass. Anyone who wants to access it, just email info@thequran.institute, and inshallah you'll be able to access it. We discuss everything from science. I mean, here I'm discussing quantum mechanics, and this is Feynman diagrams for exchanges of subatomic particles. So we discuss the latest in quantum field theory, quantum mechanics. We discuss different religions, polytheism, obviously the Hinduite beliefs and ideas, Buddhism and so on, Christianity, Judaism, so the monotheisms. we discuss ancient civilization. We discuss all these things in this course. So if you want further details, because some people have obviously raised this as a question in the chat, you can go and inquire there. Just send us email, and inshallah you can access these courses. So barakallahu feekum, that was in essence just a summary of all the things that can be said about demonstrating the truth of Islam, a summary of only the basic points, but inshallah I hope you see that Islam is not only makes sense, it's the only possible explanation for reality, and therefore it is, and it has to be true. So barakallahu feekum for listening, and inshallah I look for I'll leave it to the moderators to take it for any Q&A or discussion.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Abdullah. I mean, for this really logical interpretation, you know, for using the, you know, popping and splitting methodology to reach the conclusion, as you said. I mean, Islam is the only explanation for the reality. Now, I think we can go for section of Q&A. I think one of the questions already, I mean, was asking about some resources. So you guide them to the website. Another question was asking if there is any book, a specific book in Arabic, or actually he mentioned also in English. So any specific recommendation for a specific book to start with?
I would basically advise, so in English, I would advise the course, but there are many books that are available that discuss different things. So if you want this particular explanation, currently it's only in a course, but inshallah will be in a book form in English language, and maybe inshallah translate into Arabic. As for Arabic, I would advise you get in touch with obviously Islam Forum. I'm sure they have loads of resources that could help you in that. So I'll leave it to them to give you the best recommendations.
Yeah, inshallah. I mean, you can communicate actually with us actually, and we can advise you. There are some you know, nice books. If I'd like now to recall, I can go for Qasat al-Iman, actually, Nadim Jisr, Sheikh Nadim Jisr. It was really a good book to start with, at least if you don't have any, you know, background in this field. Let me go to the other question. How does someone to choose the best way easily?
Okay, how does someone choose the best way easily? So I need some clarification on that. Like, what do they mean by the best way? Is it just Islam itself, like choose the right religion, or choose? So what exactly are they referring to when they mean the best way?
If you want, Brother Muhammad Amin, you can have the mic and ask directly your question. Because also there's another question from him, and I think it needs also clarification. There's a question also from Brother Afif. What book do you recommend for the Orthodox Christians as a gift to define Islam? Short and easy and friendly.
These are more book recommendations. Again, it depends the resources you have. So if you're looking at Arabic speakers, then I would refer to the Islam Forum, who, if I remember correctly, have quite a lot of resources dealing with Christianity that they have to hand. And so you can use their resources on this. In English, there are many books, but when it comes to kind of something that would give, there's a few good books, but I would probably have to advise you in emails or chat. But I think you can Google them to find books that are good for Christians from a Muslim perspective. I really want people to research it themselves, because I don't want people to rely on only one book. Sometimes one of the problems I've noticed is when people try to investigate, they say, just give me one book and I will read it, and I will do tasdeeq jazim on it. I will just believe it for absolute certainty, everything on this one book. I'll be a muqallid of this book. It's like, no, you need to read multiple books and build a stronger foundation for yourself. And so it's kind of spoon feeding approach is not the best. You need to Google, there's tons of different Dawah books. I built up my collection of, I used to collect, loads of Dawah books about Christianity. And then I jumped into, that was when I was really, really young. And then I jumped into reading Christianity myself, different books and texts. So I advise you do the same. Read different sources and find what you think might be the best one for the Christian, for a Christian you might know. And it also depends the Christian you're speaking to. So if you're saying Orthodox Christians, then I'm not sure any book in English because in English we only deal with Protestants and Catholics, and Orthodox Christians are a little bit different. So I can't think of a book for inviting to Islam that's tailor-made for Orthodox Christians. Usually they talk about church history, the Roman Catholic Church, or Protestantism, and so on and so forth. So, but inshallah, I think you'll find there's quite a few, and then pick what you think might be the most appropriate for an Orthodox Christian.
There is also a nice introduction, if you'd like to have it as a gift for some of the Christians, a brief illustration guide to Islam. This is a very nice introductory kind of introducing Islam in a best and very easy way. So, I mean, it's available in Muntada if you want to have a copy in different languages. We have actually English, French, Arabic. It's already available. And as Brother Abdullah said, it's a good guide to have as introductory level. But later on, he have to read a lot and to investigate to get more information from different resources as mentioned. Okay, we have another question.
Yeah, well,
what is the difference between Islam and Judaism concept of God?
Okay, so first and foremost, perhaps I feel a little bit bad that I advise the brother to investigate. So in himself, it's only because my general principle is I want to encourage people to do their own investigation rather than rely on just being given a book and then they just take from it. But if you do want some a good, interesting intro book, which is really good could be useful for Christians engaging, but I'm not sure if it's going to be useful for Orthodox ones. There's a friend of mine I know called Abu Zakaria, who he wrote a book which you can download for free called Jesus, Man, Messenger, and Messiah. So I know Abu Zakaria is a very nice brother, and it's called Jesus, Man, Messenger, Messiah, if you'd like in English. But please get other books and read around the subject. Don't rely on only one book, because you'll miss things if you only rely on one book. So someone says, can we have you want to know the difference between Islam and Judaism, the concept of God? So now Judaism, in essence, because of its interaction with Muslims and Islam, there was different divergent schools and ideas which were entertaining the idea of a God that is almost as an anthropomorphic God, they were basically kind of mujassima, if you like, believe that God has components and parts that in Judaism. And because of the interaction with Islam, that got shaved off and deleted. And the part that was maintaining, you could say, what we call a tawheed, a very strict tawheed, was there. So Islam had that interaction with Judaism, and it was, you could say, very beneficial, at least to maintaining the tawheed matter. The concept of God in Judaism is one which is it's more about the text rather than anything else. The concept of God is the same for the most part, exactly the same, right? One God, indivisible, is not like human beings, makes everything is to worship him. But it's almost like if you read the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, as the Christians call it, it's more like a seerah of the tribes of Israel, the history of their peoples and their interaction with God, rather than in the Quran. It's a very first person. It's the word of God directly. It's first person. Someone kind of highlighted to me once that nowhere in the Bible does it say this is the word of God, but in the Quran it says this is the word of God. This is the Kalam Allah. So I can really just point to the texts themselves. So there is no real difference between the God of Islam and the God of Judaism. It's the same God. We all believe in the same God. It's rather the question is, do we have everything that the God has revealed, preserved in Judaism, such that you don't need any further religions? Well, I'd say there's a few problems. There's a few contradictions and errors in the text, which means that we can't be sure what part of the text is original and what part of the text. It's not even original. The text wasn't written by any of the prophets. For example, in Deuteronomy, it's a book of the Tanakh, allegedly written by Moses. So it's written by Musa. Allegedly, this is the words of Musa. You can find it yourself, by the way. Please don't take my word for it. But in this, it says, and Musa lived for many years, and then he died, and he was buried, and no one to this day knows where he is buried. This is in the book that was narrated by Moses, Musa alayhi salam. So Musa alayhi salam said that Musa, in the third person, Musa died and was buried where someone doesn't know, where people don't know, in the past tense, and to this day, no one knows where he's buried. Does that make sense to you? Is that the words of Moses? Does that sound like the words of Moses to you? Or does that sound like the words of someone else much later on writing a history about what they think happened to Moses and what he said? So this is the kind of, so really the sources of something is a big question mark. But also other things, like for example, Ibrahim alayhi salam is narrated that he intuited that God commanded him to sacrifice his monogenes in Greek, or the only begotten son, right? His firstborn or only son, okay? And they say it's Isaac. But we know that Ismail is his firstborn son, not Isaac, right? So it wouldn't make sense that Isaac was the person to be sacrificed, because that wouldn't be his firstborn or his only son. Because when Isaac was born, then Ibrahim had two sons. So this kind of contradiction you see in the Old Testament, or Tanakh, means that we're not sure how much of that revelation is preserved or accurate, or whether even we have anything that is original somewhat. It's like reading a book of Sirah. If you read the Sirah book, or you read the history by Ibn Kathir, right? It reads like that. Okay, would you say that Ibn Kathir or the Sirah is the Quran, or is Wahi, the Sirah literature? You wouldn't say that, would you? I mean, sure, maybe there's verse of Quran mentioned in the Sirah in some places, and there's ahadith, narrations about the Prophet Muhammad mentioned in the Sirah. But the Sirah itself, the books of Sirah, is not revelation. But that's exactly what the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, and the New Testament, which is the Gospels and letters, that's what they are. So the real question is not, are they different gods, the God of Judaism or the God of Islam, but do we have the words of God preserved in Islam or Judaism? And Islam, well, we know that it's preserved from the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Musa alayhi salam's being a messenger of God. We don't know if we have it preserved, the words of God, and so that's the big question mark we have to raise.
We'll take this last question. You told that there is no chance in the physical world, even roll of a dice is the result of a physical process. Could you elaborate on this point and what you meant by this?
I don't think I said this. Well, I don't think I mentioned that specifically. There's no chance in the physical world, but I would say that there's no randomness. There is no randomness. That does not mean that there is a strict determinism between one moment in time to the next moment in time. It's fully determined by what happened in the past moment, plus the laws of physics. What we call randomness is usually just something that's so complex that there's so many things happening that we don't know everything that's happening, or we can't see everything that's happening. That's what we mean by randomness. So I'll say that randomness, which is basically something is caused without a cause, is a contradiction. So something is produced by something, so it can't make itself. And we know that from nothing, nothing comes. So nothing can make itself, by nothing. So either something is created deliberately, or it already exists and it is affected by something else. But either of those two, there's no other possibility. So there is no randomness. There's only what is outside our knowledge. And that would be my answer to your question, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Brother Abdullah. I mean, it was really nice. I think we'll stop here. We had the, nice Q&A. I would like to thank you again and thank all those who are with us today. I would like also to remind you that we are in the middle of the conference now. We already have 2 more Arabic lectures and 2 more English lectures. We will have tomorrow, we'll be talking with Brother Ahmed Al-Sayyid about أثر التزكية الإيمانية في تحسين من الشبهات الفكرية. Then on Friday, we will have that in English with Sheikh Abdurrahim McCarthy. We'll be talking about holding on to our faith in the time of fitna. On Saturday, we'll be having an Arabic lecture with Muhandis Fadil Sulaiman, and we'll talk about جرع التقاح ضد الإلحاد في الصغر. And our last session on Sunday, it will be our actually last surprise where we'll be having a real journey of guidance from the the kufr to iman, completely from the deepest side of kufr to the brightest side of iman. That would be our last visit, our last lecture. That will be on Sunday. We thank you again, Brother Abdullah, and we are looking forward for another lecture with you. I mean, and thank you everybody on the name of Muntada and all the administration. We'd like to thank you everybody, and thank you everyone. Have a nice night, and thank you again.